Hi, I'm Kat Balch from NASA's Aerospace Education Services project. This video will show you some examples of how research on plants in space is benefiting us here on Earth, a quick overview of the activities included in the Summer of Innovation curriculum, and some other relevant resources to support your programming. NASA is preparing for space travel to other planets, and that means long-duration missions. In those missions, plants will provide essential life support functions like purifying the air and water. It is also cheaper and more efficient to grow our food in space than having to bring all of our food with us. And plants provide psychological benefits to the astronauts. Today, astronauts are performing experiments on the International Space Station. The Lotta Greenhouse has been on ISS since 2002, and over 35 different long-term experiments involving plants have been performed. These experiments have led to many new inventions. For example, technology developed for growing plants in the closed environment that exists in space have evolved into products to help keep your food fresh at the grocery store and hospitals free of germs, and purify our air and water. You can find out more about current missions involving plants on the NASA website. The links are included in the bookmarks. The 5 activities I will talk about today assume your students have a basic knowledge about what is necessary for plants to grow, characteristics about plants, and what happens as a plant grows. The lessons I will talk about today are all good activities, but do not automatically make a well-rounded plant unit. Be sure to research in the Other Resources section or check the special Summer of Innovation grade level idea area on the website to help create the best possible program that meets your unique setting and time frame. From experiments performed on previous space missions, scientists have learned that plants in space grow in every direction. The plants struggle at first because they don't have gravity as a reference point, and they start adapting to other references. The leaves use light as a reference, while the roots stretch towards water. Have Seed Will Travel activity comes from the NASA Sci-Files video, The Case of the Inhabitable Habitat. This activity is not on the video, but it is in the support materials. It introduces students to the idea that adaptation is needed for an organism to survive. Students will compare different seed types to see how the shape and properties of the seed help its survival. This activity will take you about 30 minutes. The next couple of activities in this unit are taken from the Teachers and Students Investigating Plants in Space Educator Guide. This is a great resource with other relevant activities if you have extra time. The first lesson, How Do We Know Which Way to Grow, is found on page 79. Seeds are germinated in the dark over several days and are observed and measured for the direction of growth. At specified intervals of time, their orientation is altered. At each orientation, the growth response is recorded. Readings will be taken every 12 hours, so it will take about 4 to 7 days, so plan accordingly. The next 2 activities focus on observing how light affects plants' behavior. The first phototropism activity, How Little Light Will Bend a Seedling, is on page 88 of the guide. Students will make a hypothesis about how much light will be needed to bend the seedling. Students will have 4 different chambers, each with a different aperture size. The seeds will sit in the dark for about 48 hours, and then the window covers will be removed. At each time interval, students will very carefully remove the seedling and use the tropism response measuring card and indicate the angle of the bend. The students will need to take observation notes every 10 to 12 hours, so plan accordingly. The other phototropism activity is called Do Plants Prefer the Blues? To learn if plants respond differently to the different colors in the spectrum. Now, this was an actual experiment done on STS-121 in 2006. In that tropy experiment, scientists studied a weed in the cabbage and mustard family to see if its roots grew more readily towards red or blue light. Now, in our experiment, students will use lettuce or alfalfa seeds. Students will construct a phototropism chamber and give the seedlings a choice of red, green, or blue light, each coming from a different direction, to see if the seed bends towards one color more than the others. After the seeds are put in the chamber, they will be left alone for 48 to 72 hours. And then the students will open the lid and see if their hypothesis was correct and how it compared to the real experiment in 2006. This next activity requires a more advanced knowledge of photosynthesis and the function of energy and oxygen on the process. Can photosynthesis occur on Saturn? Saturn is more than 9 times farther away from the Sun than Earth is, and as a result, Saturn receives less than 1% of the sunlight that the Earth receives. Will this be enough sunlight to drive photosynthesis? This activity takes 2 bunches of fresh spinach leaves and measures how much oxygen is absorbed over time in 2 different lighted environments. One bunch will be in almost darkness and one in the bright sunlight, and you will have to use a light meter to determine the proper locations. Now the bubbles in the straw will be measured every 30 minutes for 4 hours. The bubbles indicate the amount of oxygen in the plant. The amount of oxygen in the plant is directly proportional to the rate of photosynthesis that is occurring in the plant. Now there are some other great resources for finding experiments that involve plants in space that will help you give your students a very complete plant unit. The NASA Sci-Files video series called The Case of the Inhabitable Habitat and The Case of the Prize-Winning Plants are really good, and these videos have an educator guide that includes a lot of hands-on activities. Now the hands-on activities in the guide can be pulled out from the video series or done as a whole unit. The Engineering Design Challenge, Building a Lunar Plant Growth Chamber, is covered in the Summer of Innovation lesson videos. The plant growth chambers were sent up on STS-118 and returned on STS-120. You can find more information about this activity on the Summer of Innovation website. A new educator plant guide has been released by Baylor University. This compares plants you grow in your classroom with plants that are growing in space right now. It uses a gelatin substance to provide nutrients for long-term growth. You can register on the website and follow the plants as they grow both in space and in your classroom. As NASA prepares to define the next missions into space, the role of plants is crucial to human survival. Your students will really enjoy these examples of real-world science. Thank you for joining us as we explore this Summer of Innovation.